Hello, guys. This is Sherry from Paranormal World Investigators. This is Sherry from PWI, Paranormal World Investigators Research Division. Welcome to our live. So, tonight's topic for the company is to do with Samuel's Saturday show. He's going to be talking tonight about vampires and giving you all the amazing facts about vampires, guys. So, as I will normally do, I will drop down, let Samuel take the show over, and if he needs me, I will be back up and a shout as well. So, any questions or anything you're wanting to ask, that will be done at the end when Samuel's finished doing the reading and everything. And I'll come up and I'll do a little bit of fact stuff. You can ask us questions, and we'll have a little conversation going. So, over to you, Samuel.
Well, it's good to see you guys. And tonight's show will be on vampires, but from a different perspective. And let's get ready and let's start it. The description: the idea of vampires can be drawn from the many societies through the world. People think of vampires as being a nostalgic evil that does nothing but drink blood from the living, have mystical powers, beautiful to a fault, and sunlight vaporizing them. People also think of Count Dracula with an Eastern European accent and turning into a bat and some fog, and also being terrified of sunlight. Some of the characteristics of vampires can vary. Vampires are not immortal, but they can look extremely young if they take care of themselves. Sort of like for every 3 years a human being may age, a vampire will age only 4 to 6 months. All vampires, in theory, are bisexual or pansexual, and are oftentimes can be extremely sexually promiscuous. Another thing about vampires, some people don't know about, is that they all have OCD. So, like if you drop something on the ground, whenever it comes to their form of OCD, they will. Most of them will get on squat or get down on their hands and knees to pick up those things that somebody has dropped. But finding the trigger of that OCD can be a challenge, but once you find it, you're definitely going to know. And added on to this, they all have a strange obsession with their teeth, and that's how a lot of them can be. There's a condition that can make a person feel like they are a vampire. And I can never pronounce this correctly. Porphyria is a group of disorders that a group of disorders by defects that are biosynthetic, a pathway of human and erythrocyte cofactor essential to importing oxygen. Basically, if this illness is shed on light, the concept of vampires needing blood and also extreme sensitivity to sunlight, this has been around since the 1980s. So basically, in a general sense, with that, they need with this affliction of porphyria, they need human blood. Otherwise, they're going to feel malnourished. They're going to get sick and this and that and feel horrible so much of the time. Now, they're not they can digest food, but for some of them, actual human blood is what will keep them going to some degree. And then also, there is the extreme a lot of them have extreme sensitivity to sunlight. It's not going to kill them. They're not going to burn up in ash and mid-air and all that other stuff. But they're going to have a certain sensation of pain, and added on to it, added on to it, there's oftentimes that they can burn in the sunlight, not like falling into a flame, but a nasty sunburn. And also, back in the earlier in time, there was something called the Black Veil that was set up, sort of a series of guidelines that has been revised several different times. The Black Veil goes into details about a code of conduct that people that are vampires that claim to be children of the night are supposed to do. And I guess you can say in that sort of way, children of the night. There are certain guidelines they talk about. One of those things are vampires that are supposed to have a donor. A donor is somebody that gives themselves freely in a certain way to allow themselves to have their blood drawn from them and everything, and to have actual human blood drawn from them. And it can keep some people that call themselves vampires from committing stupid, ferocious, dumb crimes, or even assault, or even something called murder and everything. Because of the thirst that they have for that blood, it can be over the top, horrible for them. And then there's the issue of diversity. Diversity is the way of strength that shows brotherhood of vampires, helping one another in their time of need, of something that many vampires need to take pride in and must realize that must be done. In other words, different points of view, different points of being, and all this other stuff. It can help you and save your life. In other words, the many become the one, and the one being there for all of their kind. That's how it's supposed to be. And also, whenever you do that sort of thing, you're supposed to take pride. Well, vampires are supposed to take pride, but not realize that they are the overlords of society. Flaunting what you are as a vampire is arrogant and is not a good thing. Plus, it attracts negative stereotypes from many different sources. Arrogance basically leads to downfall. And whenever you think that you are better than others just because you're a certain way, you're going to get knocked down a few pegs. And also, like I said, flaunting it is never good. There's a lot of negativity that's surrounded with vampires and giving the stigma that is dangerous to all vampires. With vampires, that can lead, sometimes vampires have havens in case all hell breaks loose. Sort of like a safe house for them where they have certain supplies and this and that. But vampires, they sometimes have those havens that none of them will ever talk about because it's supposed to be a safe haven. No one's wanting them to know. And with the havens, you should never bring your personal business to those havens, and you are to show respect to the individuals that are providing that safe place to stay. The Black Veil also recommends to show respect to the community that is under a different rule that you may not be used to. One of the biggest things vampires do is to show that constant respect towards any elder of that community. One of those biggest things to do is the constant respect to the elder, like I said. There are those ones that help vampires in various different ways. Blood, shelter, connections, and the list can go on and on from that. Many of those people that come from various parts of life, from the well-to-do, even the people that are on the wrong side of the tracks, consider themselves in some sort of way, and there are those that do not know that they are vampires at all. They can also have various jobs in various fields, from different walks of life. Many of them choose a name for them, and they do not normally go by their legal names. Basically, they have an alias to try and protect their identity. Many of them do not. Okay, the reason is because, without a doubt, it could ruin them job-wise and their personal life. The stigma of being a vampire is that of people thinking of violent bloodsuckers that do anything and everything, and will do whatever they want, any way they want, from any path, from those people who, I guess you could say, society thinks that they deserve it. And also with the arrogance, like I was saying, and lack of respect, many of those people can do certain bad things to innocent people who do not deserve it. Regular people go around everywhere Regular people go around everywhere and often call themselves children of the night or vampires. They sometimes get contacts to give themselves a certain look and to even get fake teeth, canine teeth, to add to the mystery of what image that they're looking to have for a specific night that was mentioned. They can often at times get along with certain television shows and even movies to match the character that they wish to play. If you ever see Interview with the Vampire, two, I guess you can say, false icons, basically their actors, is Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise. The way they played it had a huge appeal of mystery, and I guess you can say, and mystery, and also an idle sort of way of being. But keep in mind that those were characters, brilliant characters that Anne Rice had done, but they're still characters. There are tabletop role-playing games, or RPGs, that can simulate people's fascination with vampires. One of those is called Vampire the Masquerade, which led to other spin-offs. You can create a character's strengths and flaws, and even personality traits. The character you create has to be followed as if the person is an actual vampire. In other words, if you're going to take on the role, if you want the role, you have to take on the role. Some people call that method acting. The character you create can be followed as an actual vampire. The game is centered around a world of darkness, and if the person was an actual vampire, The game is centered. The game is centered around a world of darkness and their need to survive, but to not lose their humanity. In some ways, by speculation, people said it was a game that was in training for individuals to become vampires. Whatever the case was and is, it centers around the misunderstood and those that have a primal nature of wanting to be in this world in a fictitious sort of way. There are other books and role playings that talk about groups that vampires belong to, but it is not too far-fetched if you think about it. If you take fraternities, they oftentimes do a process called hazing. Their belief oftentimes is that if things get too tough during those kinds of intentions, then how will they do whenever things get really tough? Later on, the fraternity and the mindset of what they call a brotherhood, and after the experience of college and university, many of them stay in contact with, and they're there for each other through the good times and the bad times. They can also be there for their brothers in case someone loses a job, at least someone to talk, and if somebody needs to talk to somebody. The way this relates to vampires is that it's of a clan. Names of those clans are jealously guarded to protect their anonymity. Added to that, they are able to find donors for the people that they in the brotherhood, for fellow vampires, and can sometimes get a protector. There are always issues that clans can sometimes be forced to deal with: deception and even lack of loyalty. If someone does something that a clan does not like, they can be reprimanded, and the reprimand can be severe. There's the possibility of moving up in ranks with the Brotherhood, but most vampires have to prove themselves before even being considered to do a task for that clan. There are spiritual, physical protectors of various different faiths and backgrounds along with those issues, and can sometimes be chosen by a vampire organization that vampires come from, such as the clan. Some people that look after vampires are called protectors. Protectors normally have a certain calling to being there for others. It does matter to a protector on whom and what they protect. With protectors, they have a certain calling to protect others, whether the individual is that of the light or is that person of those shadows. The protector has to be who they feel they are and must stick to it. Many of those protectors will do what they can to keep that person they have dedicated dedicated to themselves safe by any means necessary. The protector may even lose their life in the process if it comes to that. Protectors will guard those at all costs, no matter what the outcome. There are those that can keep the sanity of Sangrean vampires. They're called black swans. They're a huge help to vampires. The donors give their blood willingly, and oftentimes to their mate. Donors are checked for blood-borne pathogens regularly. They can oftentimes use medical-type needles that are called butterfly needles on the donors and draw enough that could be considered at least 2 shot glasses worth, 1 to 2 shot glasses worth of blood. This can keep the recipient in good, if not excellent health for 2 weeks. Many people call themselves vampires, look at donors as a relief and a huge necessity. Many people that are Sangrean vampires will have chronic health problems, and those health problems can stick around and get worse unless they feed. In the vampire community, not always, donors can be compensated for their time and oftentimes handsomely. In those communities, a donor is well respected, and vampires do not show this respect do not show donors respect can be dealt with quickly and sometimes harshly. In other words, the black swans, the donors, whatever you want to call them, if a vampire has been rude to them, and the outcome will not be good. On the issue of the protectors, if you think about it, they're the ones who are willing to stick their necks out there and do whatever it can be done to save their lives, even if it means the cost of their own. Both the black swans or donors and the protectors, they know their calling. And at the end of the day, they will never feel remorse or anything, because in their eyes, they did the right thing for that person that they had to do. The first type of vampire is called a Sangrean. Many people out there do the vampire thing because they can see it as being fun, sort of like around Halloween. Oftentimes, Sangrean vampires believe that they cannot survive on animal muscle or blood because it does not have the qualities that a human does have. Many people think that Sangrean vampires are terrified of crosses and garlic and things like that. But the thing is that vampires actually, they adore garlic. They're quite fond of religious artifacts or whatever they're called, sort of like ankhs or crosses or even a Star of David. They love them. Oftentimes they do. A reality that most people do not know is that Sangrean vampires are influenced by many different cultures of the past and some of the present. Some of those are ancient Babylon. And if you know about Babylon, it's pretty interesting. You also have Greece and even ancient Greece and Balkans, Asia, even Eastern Europe, which they synonymous with Count Dracula, and even the ancient city of Carthage. If you ever get the time to look that up, and you're going to find it fascinating as anything. What else is there? You got pranic vampires. Pranic vampires are known, but they're not known. Pranic vampires are also called sonic or psi vampires. Vampires that are people that feed off of the energy of others. They can even feed off of certain emotions that produce a certain kind of energy. In other words, a pranic vampire seemingly can suck the life out of you. They often when they feel they can do it on random people without suspicion of any kind. Another thing they can do in order to change the mood of an entire room of people without spreading any kind of suspecting anything. Say if George enjoys the energy of happiness, he will go out of his way to maybe make it the significant other extremely happy, maybe even with the gift of something like kind words or flowers or even a puppy. And if they live off the happiness or positive sort of vibe, they will constantly keep the good mood flowing. Say like if George prefers the emotion of anger, he can start an argument and feeds off the person who has a lot of rage. In other words, if he's mad, if he lives off of rage, then he's going to do whatever he can to start, say, like a nasty verbal argument. And for pranic vampires, that can be kind of easy to do. Oftentimes, drawing energy, they can do it through most anything: animals, plants, humans, and even other vampires. Those that are aware of what they are, they can draw from most anyone. Most of them normally find someone that has given permission to their host, but there are those who have no problem drawing from any unsuspecting victims. Then you have sexual vampires or tantric vampires, or those that you could say are pranic sanguine, but they live for more along the lines of sexual energy. The reason they do this is because the taste of energy, such as the taste of energy and blood, is more explosive in a metaphoric sense and primal. It exceeds everything pleasure-wise, and some say it can be extremely addicting. It is also said that tantric vampires are exceedingly beautiful and possess healing abilities and hypnotic powers. Like I said, you can consider many different people pranic vampires in the way that, like I was saying, tantric vampires, I apologize. Tantric vampires, if you take a look at certain celebrities that never age and this and that, they're normally drop dead gorgeous, or extremely handsome. And if you look at it, that's how it goes. They keep their looks, they keep the charm going, and will do what it takes to keep things going their way so that way they can feed off certain energies. Then there's ones that most people never talk about. They're called dhampirs. Dhampirs are a mix of both vampire and human. They can be considered very, if not extremely rare. Most people do not recognize the connection that with human and vampires. They are normally those that lead regular lives and do what they can to hide in the open to where there is no suspicion of what they are. The person from the Balkans in Europe can be considered very strong. In theory, they are able to do things that are invisible and are able to practice sorcery. Then they are known for having heightened sense of sight and hearing. Some legends say that they have a mark on their lower back that looks like that of a tail. It is also said that they cast no shadow. Some amounts of fiction say there are those dhampirs, but hunt other vampires to atone for what the monstrous acts their family has done along with their ancestors. Depending on where you are in the world geography wise, you can expect to have sometimes to hear of hunters. Hunters are those that hunt those that are considered to be killers of the innocent and the enemies of the night, or not of the night, the light. Hunters oftentimes have bounty hunters. So let me re-say that. Hunters oftentimes can be bounty hunters of demons, werewolves, and even the undead. Vampires are not exempt from being hunted. Oftentimes, hunters will use firearms, crossbows, and even certain kinds of magic. Along with that, vampire hunters will will use vampire weaknesses against them. Vampires have an extremely sexual nature to them, so they use attractive people to draw out those sexual instincts that a vampire has. Vampires have also known to have OCD, but the hunter has to figure out what the trigger is for that OCD. A vampire has been known to have an unhealthy obsession with their teeth and all that other stuff I was telling you about. Now, oftentimes with hunters, vampires will not burn alive if the sun touches them, but there are times it has a certain amount of pain and weakness. So vampire hunters try to draw a vampire into the sun, which can be considered a big weakness of vampires. A stereotype that is not true is that they do not like, well, I think I already covered that. A vampire, in theory, that vampire, in theory, they bring clergy, holy orders, and individuals of various faiths. Dhampirs are sometimes brought along because of their deep understanding of vampires, because of the family and relationships they have with them. There are other vampire hunters who use the practice of magic that are on a darker side. And okay. On the issue of killing a vampire, there are 3 parts of killing a vampire completely, to where there is no chance of no chance of return consists of this. You have to impale the heart. Impaling the heart can kill the body. Then you have to behead the body. In other words, cut off the head. The reason you behead the body is that you have the damage that the soul. The reason you behead the body is that you have to damage the soul entirely, to where the connection of that soul cannot return. Also, in doing this, there is no chance of freeing the victims that the vampire curse may revert to a human being again. After that, then you cremate the body completely, until every last part of the remains is nothing more than just dust. This act releases everything of torment that can lead the person to becoming a vampire, and the soul can finally move on and find peace in the afterlife. In a general sense, vampires in this world and have in a general sense, vampires come to this world and have been in this world for a very long time. They oftentimes hide in the shadows, try and keep the narrow-minded away from their safety. Many of those that also love regular human society and love being part of it. There are those that willingly give themselves to vampires in the way of their essence and the blood in their ways. And then there are those that will do what they can to protect them, and they also find those vampires as being dear to them. They also have been known to have families that will protect They also have been known to have families that will protect at all costs, but never telling their families what they do. In other words, a vampire hunter can have a 9-to-5 job. With the 9-to-5 job, they can work. So like they're an accountant. They go from work from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., checking facts, crunching numbers, and things like that. And if they have a family, they will love their family, play with the wife, play with the kids, and everything. And then oftentimes they will go to the gym to make themselves a little bit more healthy. And then they go actually for the hunt of a vampire. And hunters are pretty darn good at it in various different ways. But like I was saying earlier, vampire hunters oftentimes will use firearms, crossbows, or knives, swords, or things like that. The reason they do that is because they want to keep their position a secret and not draw attention to them. Once the vampire is sort of dead, then they officially kill it, like I was saying, is impaling you through the heart. But it doesn't always have to be a wooden stake. It could be just about anything. Then they cut off the head, and then they cremate the body entirely. And the reason why, like I was saying, is so that way it can not, that the soul of that vampire, the tainted part of the soul, can move on. And in a vampire hunter's eyes, that's an act of mercy. Like I was saying earlier, that there are the three types that I was talking about: the pranic, the tantric, and the sangrean vampires, or they can be all three at the same time. And in many ways, they can be tough as nails in many different ways. But the thing is that they are still people too. Most of them, like vampire hunters, they have their jobs, they have their families, they have this, they have that. And at the end of the day, they just want to live in peace to some degree. Um, but along with all this, there are those that wish to extinguish vampires and their cultures altogether. For the most part, with vampires, like with everything else, there's that time there is the time in that there where everything comes to an end. The end of the vampire, the end of for vampires is brutal and seemingly cruel, but it's part of the world that they live in. And so, well, just wondering, what do you guys think of all that? Okay.
So it's very
Well, like I
interesting.
said, on the issue of vampires, it's kind of a dark sort of thing. And with them being so dark and everything, with the whole lifestyle being dark, they have to. They're not supposed to be in the shadows. People aren't supposed to do this and that. Many of them, and they can also be people of various different faiths, from Christianity, Judaism, Islam, being a Buddhist, even a Shinto priest over in Japan. But at the end of the day, they lead a regular life like most any of us. And many of them have a conscience of what they've done in the past, and they try like anything to prevent it. So, anybody got any ideas? Anyone want to say anything?
Any questions, guys? Hello, Jacqueline, darling. Hello to Loopy as well. Loopy Dark, that's a new person in here. It's really good to see you all in. Any questions you want to ask about vampires? Anything?
Well, what? Any questions from you, Sherry, by chance?
I guess my question would be is how would they come to become a vampire? Like, what would you do to become a vampire?
Well,
Is
there.
there any faith or anything that you have to, like any ritual or anything you have to do to bring yourself over that side?
Well, it can be that way. In a simple jest and everything, people that are vampires, they normally drink blood, and I'm getting to a point with this. They drink blood to sustain themselves and everything, and they draw a certain amount and everything. And so they're in the past they have been known to kill people because of how much they draw and how much is left of the body. But with becoming a vampire, there's two parts, or there are several different parts, and we have to think about that. The biggest part, but I will cut to the gist of it. One person has to be drinking from the person that wants to become the vampire. The vampire normally goes to a part of the body where they can draw blood, where they can drink from the blood. And then there comes the other part where the vampire allows the person who wishes to be the vampire, at the time a human has to drink from the other person's blood. And
So
there are
when you
different.
say they draw blood, what do you mean? So do they use a syringe? Do they bite? What do
Well,
they do?
they can use a knife. They can use a knife. They can use a needle. They can also use their teeth and everything. And the person that is the vampire drinks from them. And the person that wishes to do that, the person returns the favor in drinking the vampire's blood themselves. And with all that, that is what happens. They call this the embrace. The embrace, depending on your point of view, is that it's supposed to be the ultimate connection, blood for blood. In other words, an exchange of blood, exchange of this, exchange for that.
It's like taking the vow and the oath.
Yes, yes.
That's who they are.
And there's many people who've done that in the past. They'll deny it up and down. And the reason why they'll deny it up and down, because it could put certain people they care about at risk, put their jobs at risk. But like I said, most people you would never know who they are. Some people, on the other hand,
would you say that there are a lot of these people around?
Yes, in every culture you can think of, in every single one to some degree.
And does every culture act differently? Do they do like every culture is different in how they would do their work?
They have similar. They're not exactly the same, but they have their differences. Some of the differences are like in Europe.
Hello, Coffin.
In Europe, they have a lot of people that do that sort of thing, or they add to it. They might have a sexual sort of meeting of the minds in that sort of way, and in a sort of sexual way.
There's a question from Jacqueline.
Yes, ma'am.
It says, are they like the Hollywood stereotypes, and what are the differences?
9/10 of the time, they are not of the stereotypes. Many of them can't, but there are a lot of them that are stereotypes. In other words, there are celebrities out there that are vampires, but they keep it to themselves. Then there are those who are obvious about it, which I won't name, but there are those that are obvious and just like they don't care. But there are those in other cultures, like I was saying, that lead 9 to 5 jobs, and you would never know. You could call it a different sort of way of cannibalism, but there are those of every single culture that do have that. Hell, your neighbor could be one, and you would never know, and everything.
So, would you say that they're not that easy to be able to tell, apart from the fact that they've got very pale skin and maybe they're a little bit different? I don't know. Like, would you be able, if you walk past one, would you know that they're a vampire? Would you know?
Well, do you remember me talking about the 3 types? The tantric, the sangrian, and the pranic?
Yeah, kind of. That was a little while back though. So
yeah.
Maybe.
Well, a lot of them can look the part, but if you want to identify them, there's, like I was saying, there are certain characteristics that you're going to look at. One of them has many of those. One of the stereotypes that they have is having obsessive compulsive disorder. If I was to take a bag of sunflower seeds in front of a vampire and I opened it, let's say I opened it,
and that would count every single one of them and pick them up,
and then they will put them in the bag. In many ways, it angers them, it frustrates them. They have this sort of laugh to them that is that of nervousness and fear to some degree, and it drives them crazy. That is a way of checking if somebody is a vampire.
I would say that maybe is the best way of getting away from one as well, then, if you're going to find
yes. Well, I mean, you do that. I mean, the thing is, that's one of the obvious signs. Yeah. Then you also got those ones who are over the top obsessed with their teeth. Whenever they're over the top obsessed with their teeth, they will pay out some big bucks out there of just about any currency to have their teeth perfectly white, or they'll have their incisors added onto to give them the typical looking fangs. A lot of them, not always, but a lot of them are extremely good looking. And another thing all of them do have in common is that they can be extremely sexual, a promiscuous sexual.
Sure, I am. I'm sure that, you know what I mean? Like, it does make you think when you sit there and you listen to some of the things that they're supposed to be like, and the things that they're into. You kind of look at yourself and you're like,
"What the hell? What the hell?"
But you know, would do some of them know that they're vampire?
Some
or
of them
not?
do know, then there's those that don't. There are
Yeah.
many of them that don't know they are. They normally, so like with certain kinds of food, say like a beef steak. I don't know how,
Yeah.
in America we say steak, and other parts they say beef steak. But they will have that piece of meat raw, and they'll have it gently seared, and they'll just eat it raw, like a fork and knife and everything, but they will eat it raw. Many of them will do this, but they won't necessarily do it with pork, because pork you have to cook the entire thing correctly, and if you don't, people could get seriously sick. And that's something that you're going to notice about them.
Jacqueline
Now,
said, "Are they a hereditary thing like witches?"
heritage,
Yeah.
it can be. It definitely can be. It definitely can be hereditary. Some people are born as vampires, but most of them that become vampires, they do the initiation the way I was describing. But there are different forms, but in essence, becoming one, it consists of having somebody take your blood, and then you receive the blood
But is that
from
the
that
only thing
person.
you have to do though? And there are a lot of studying and training and things that they have to do to be able to do that. Like say like you're in a family of vampires and you're born into the family, would they learn you from a young age and up? Do you have to
Well,
be
they're
a
not
certain
going.
age to join their coven, or can you be of any age?
Well, it depends on the person. Normally, they do not want children in that sort of respect at all. They will not let children in on that sort of issue. Many of them, to some extent. Well, let me ask you this: what do you know of the story about Cain and Abel? Abel kill Cain killed Abel, and Cain killed Abel, and he was cursed by God. That was the world's first
Right.
murder. But after a while, Cain was forgiven partially, but he had to take on a different role in the way of being that of the protectors of life, whether that of darkness and that of light. They're supposed to be there for those who, not always, but they're to. How can I put this? Uh, they're there
Right.
to protect life, especially human life, in that sort of way. Well, do they get uncomfortable with the sun? They're not going to burst into flames, but they're going to be uncomfortable with the sun. Oftentimes, they can be a little bit faster than others. They can also, in many ways, a lot of them can in theory, they can grow their fingernails out a lot quicker. And if you ever get cut by a fingernail, that's considered a weapon if you think about it. And if it grows a little bit faster than others, well, there's a weapon in itself. Um, they also have some amount of mystical knowledge and everything that they go that has dated a long time ago. They don't know how they know it, but they do know certain things that no one would also ever know.
But is
And
it
like I
not like
was,
that in any faith? We don't know everything. That's why we learn. That's why we're in there to learn. I don't think that
yeah,
anybody in
but
this world, in any faith, really knows everything, do they? They kind of just they
that's
go
what
along with
makes
it, and
vampires so.
they come to find that they remember things, or things seem relevant or familiar.
It comes with familiarity, even if they're not trained in it. They
Yeah,
naturally know, even if they've
yeah,
never even heard of it. I mean,
yeah.
I've heard of vampires being able to read languages perfectly, and they've never seen it. Say like if a person that's in North America and comes from the hills of Kentucky, I've heard about one guy who could read Sanskrit from the Hindu sort of background, and he could read it perfectly, and he was never trained in it whatsoever. He's never ventured outside the hills of Kentucky, and he could read that language
So would you
spot
say
on.
that they're clever?
They're all clever to some degree. Everyone's going to have every person has their ups and downs, and all people have a certain amount of either common sense and or intellect. But vampires naturally have both. They naturally have
Do
both. And
vampires have abilities?
yeah, well, it depends on the person and if they've discovered that ability. But the abilities range dramatically. There's no get.
Yeah, it's
There's
not going to be the same thing. They're all different, aren't they?
yeah, like regular human beings. Like if you
Yeah.
take me for example, I can do things like energy transference, say like a certain amount to a person. If somebody's wiped out mentally, I can to some degree sustain them by taking my energy hand, my giving hand, say like putting it on their shoulder or on their neck or this or that, and I can sustain them for a bit and keep them going for a little bit. Uh, Pranic vampires adore that. The reason they adore that is because it's energy. Whenever energy is coming to them on a regular basis, they feel a lot. They can feel revived, regenerated, and feel a lot better. And not necessarily strong, but better. Depending on the day that they've had. Um, like you were saying earlier, vampires can be very smart and very cunning and everything. And those are the ones to watch after. Now, keep this in mind. Many of those clans do not want that. They want it to where they are in the shadows, not hurting this person, not hurting that person. They have a certain code of, many of those clans have a certain amount of code of conduct. And that code of conduct means not hurting others. If you have a donor, go to the donor. Maybe if you can, have a steak or this or that. What's that?
Witches are natural, Loopy Dark. Some of them are trained, some of them are natural. I am a natural witch. I have never been trained. I have just known everything for nothing. I don't know how I knew it, but I do. I'm a natural witch.
Yeah.
There is such thing as natural witches.
And there's natural vampires too.
And there's people vampires, that
yeah, but a lot of them that want that sort of lifestyle that aren't, they will go through the process of having that done. Like I said, an exchange of blood, or as they call it, the embrace. So, the embrace, like I said, it consists of one, or they can both be drinking blood from each other at the same time, and that's how a lot of them are made. So,
and that he knows some stuff on vampires as well.
What's that?
Loopy Dark in the room is saying he knows stuff about vampires.
A lot of people do. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, the thing is, they are to be respected. They are to be respected and be considered in life. And most of them, they frown on people. Most vampires frown on people that do atrocious, violent acts, and oftentimes they can be dealt with in a harsh manner. Basically, you're harming somebody who doesn't deserve it and was not willing to go through that. And there are penalties that vampires can give towards people who take a life for no real reason. Hurting somebody, in essence, it's basically, you're going to have karma in a bad way. So, and that's how it goes with, like I said, if you want to know more, try and do a Google search on the Black Veil. You will find out a lot more about it. They'll find out the code of conduct that is a set of guidelines that vampires are going to want to have.
Yeah.
And so that's how it goes. Many of them, well, like I said, and on the issue of protectors, I covered that. I'm trying to get what else. Tantric vampires normally are normally vampires that have, Tantric vampires are those that are of sexual nature, very sexual and feed off sexual energies. and they have a code of conflict of various different ways. And they abide, most of them, 9/10 of them, abide by that code of conduct, no problem. And like any other group, any other general group, most people are willing to follow the guidelines or the laws or whatever you want to call them. They're going to follow them and follow them without question. But you have some of those people, they think that the laws do not abide by them. And like I was telling you, they suffer certain consequences that can be considered extreme.
Oh, hello. Yeah, no, I'm
But
just going through the chat thing at the minute. Like I got a few bits up and stuff. Like there's more of the stereotypes, the ones that you would normally hear of on things. But as like Samuel said, you know, in real reality, you know, real life vampires of today, they do die just like we do, but they age
mm,
younger.
yeah, they like, I mean, if one of them takes care of themselves, if they take care of themselves properly, like diet, exercise, this and that, and everything. Whenever they do that, they age extremely slow. And I've heard of them. I mean, take like some of the celebrities out there, those that haven't had plastic surgery or this or that. Those ones that haven't had plastic surgery, they look very young because they take care of themselves, but they do feed off other people, and those people that are vampires, they follow that code of conduct, and plastic surgery doesn't matter to them. They take care of themselves. It's going to last for they're going to last for a very long time.
Loopy Dark, did you say that you DM'd me or you've damned me? What does that mean? What you
I
saying?
don't know what
Does
DM
it say
means.
damned? Or did he just say, did they say DM'd?
I don't. Hello, Coffin. Hello, Michelle. But like I said, with vampires, like anyone else, they have their code of conduct. They're susceptible to certain laws and everything. And at the end of the day, they can be like anyone and everyone else out there. If you do what you're told, you can get ahead. You work hard enough, and this and that. But that's just how it goes. Now, whenever it comes to pranic vampires, like I was saying, most of them have certain energies that they prefer. Okay, let me give you a great example. Have you ever gone into a room where, say, like there's a meeting or there is a little party or get together? Have you ever gone to one of those things and people are socializing, they're having a good time? Now, picture this. You have that one person who walks into that room, and picture them as a pranic vampire. They walk into the room, and all of a sudden they go in there, and they say certain things and get people arguing here and there. The entire room and then they sit back and they wait, and that entire room is arguing with one another. Everyone's mad, and that's the start of a pranic vampire. The pranic vampire is feeding off that energy, and feeding off of it pretty bad in various different ways. So, and that's what not all pranic vampires do that, but that one lives off negative energy, starts some negativity, sits back in a corner, and just feeds off of it. And that's one of the things a pranic vampire can do. Pranic vampires can also feed off positivity. They feed off positivity, and they feed off of it dramatically. So, I mean, if somebody came to your place, and say like if a vampire that was pranic vampire found out there was a girlfriend that he loves her energy, and she was having a tough time, How would that young woman be if that pranic vampire paid off her entire college student loans? She would love it. She would be happy, joyous, and all that other stuff. Basically, he turned her into a lunch because he's feeding off of her happiness and relief. And like I was telling us, tantric are kind of tantric. I don't know enough about, but tantric vampires, they like I was saying, they live off sexual energy, and sexual energy is a very powerful thing. And whenever they feed off tantric sort of things, then they're very good at it. What else is there? And then there's another one. I know I keep repeating myself on this, but most of them, the biggest taboo that most of them will not even think of is taking a child and drawing from their blood. That pretty much anywhere you're going to get hurt for doing that. That is a code of conduct. You are not to hurt something that is innocent by any means. Innocent people are to be treasured and to be well respected and to some degree left alone. And you will suffer consequences if you harm, say, like a puppy or a child or a woman that is an innocent person. You don't harm innocent. And like I said, you're signing a certain kind of warrant on that. But that's how it goes. But whenever it comes to hunters, like I said, there's male hunters, then there's the female hunters. Not hunters, but there's the Dhampirs. I cannot really pronounce them correctly to save my life. But Dhampirs are the ones that, like I said, male or female. Like the father can be male, and the father can be a vampire, and the mother can be human. And the child will be born as a Dhampir who has certain abilities, but doesn't have nearly the same weaknesses.
We know what you were saying, Lou. When you was writing in that foreign language, you were saying that it means humans will never be vampires.
Well, it does happen. They can be brought into it, and it does. Like I said, it does happen, and you can be embraced, and then you will become a vampire. I get people that want to argue that on a day-by-day basis, but in all reality, it does happen.
Yeah,
So,
I've heard of people switching, but yeah, I think it's less. Let's not. I think a lot of the vampire covens are people that have been in it a long time. It's like, I think a lot of them are like family and close relative related in some ways.
No, and they're not like in the classic film day, the golden screen day of age, where you got the cape, you got the Eastern European tuxedo.
Asking if you've ever come across a vampire.
I have a few times. Normally they can be quite friendly towards me, quite open. I will never say their names out of respect especially on media, but a lot of them have been very good to me. And I respect their privacy, and many of them I've adored.
Vamps love this New Orleans deputy.
Well, a lot of them
I agree.
in New Orleans, New Orleans has a huge, massive history. Older than the original United States, even very far back and everything. And a lot of them gone there for the culture, this and that and everything. If you ever take a look at the backgrounds, that New Orleans has, it's pretty substantial and it does make sense. Where if you go down to a wrong corner, something could happen to you. Or you can meet, or sometimes a vampire, they just want a best friend. They want somebody that can they can
Can
confide in.
vampires stalk you? Because, like, of the
Right.
way that they are, and that, say, like, you've got these vampires that are into the weird stuff, like the sex and all that stuff. Can they become stalkers?
It depends on the person. This theory I heard about a long time ago, and it's still true. Well, not true. I'm not 100%, but oftentimes vampires, Sangrean vampires, let me state that, if they have a certain donor, if they have like an intermediate donor that they might have, if that donor has given them three feedings, not always, but that donor, that vampire could be very attached to that donor, and that donor that has given them that gift, that vampire will protect them, will do this, will look after them in many different ways. So
Yeah, no,
basically, to
I
some degree,
understand that, but like, I'm just trying to understand because obviously you said that they've got other tendencies, like they've got an overreactive mind in wanting to keep their teeth clean. They've got OCD and stuff. So wouldn't they be that sort of way about a particular person that they want to have
yes,
sex with, or would they
yeah,
become
and
obsessed with them? Is it the
that's what
same as
I'm
watching a vampire film where they want the blood so much? Is it similar?
actually to some degree. Well, like I was saying, I was agreeing with you, but they
Yeah,
may
I'm just
have.
asking a question because I find this
Oh, I'm agreeing
fascinating.
with you. That person that they've drawn, that they've drank their blood or taken their energy three times, they can be extremely attached to, excuse me, they can be extremely attached to the person. And whenever they're
But do they
extremely
have to be
attached,
attached to them? Do they have to have had any of that connection to actually be attracted to someone? Is what I'm saying.
well, they'll oftentimes they want them to be a companion. They want, and they will do what they can to make that donor of some kind their friend, their lover, or this or that. They can be somebody that is obsessed with making that person happy. So the what I'm getting at is yes, they can be obsessed with the donor to some degree from that.
Yeah, I understand that, but surely not all of them fall in love with their donors. Because I'm surely not everybody that's attracted or likes a vampire actually believes in giving their blood. It's just the attraction of what they are.
Yes, it could be they may not be in love with them, but they can be attracted to them or even feel uh, they can feel like I need to be around this person or this or that. So they can become a stalker of the person, like you were saying. They can be a stalker of the person that has donated to them. So say like if I cut my arm and a vampire wanted needed something to needed to be revitalized to feed, and I've done that for them three times. Not always, but they can have more of a tendency to be drawn towards me than I would ever really realize. But
Okay.
another thing about donors is they are constantly tested for bloodborne pathogens. Now, especially Sangrean vampires. Sangrean vampires want to know if that person is clean, if they have this happen or that happen, if they have any STDs or STIs, as it's called nowadays. They're going to want to know that if they take on a regular donor. And they're going to want to know that. And to some extent, I get that. And vampires are very susceptible towards, Sangrean vampires are very susceptible towards getting sick in a bloodborne way. So if they find out, they won't even touch somebody who has AIDS. If somebody's doing a lot of drugs, they won't touch the person who, if the donor does drugs, they won't have anything to do with that person who does
Oh no, I
drugs.
would hope that nobody would want. But you're not going to want to drink the blood if it's got got that
Exactly.
in the blood. You know what I mean? I think
Exact.
anyone, not even if you was a vampire, you'd want to do that.
Exactly. Exactly. They have to get. They want their donors checked. Blood Sangrean vampires want their donors checked on a regular basis.
So you're
Yeah,
saying that not all of them do check then? Some of them are just freely take the blood without checking to make sure that people are clean.
those they do want the person clean, but not all vampire. Most vampires that don't follow that guideline and just drink feed off of people randomly, there's consequences to that, dramatic
Yeah.
consequences.
Mm.
And oftentimes if they find a person who's been doing drugs, who has been doing drugs and everything, and they go and they feed off that person, they could get sick, if not dramatically sick. I mean, we're talking an epic sickness of plague proportions.
Mm.
So, but if they have a regular donor, they want that donor checked. And oftentimes, those vampires who have a favorite donor that they go to, they oftentimes treat them like not gold, but platinum, like diamonds with platinum all over it. And most of them are very good to their donors.
Yeah. It's fascinating because obviously everybody's different, and you know, like I in the time that I've come across, like I'm not saying I've come across vampires. I've seen people that I think might be like just because of the way they're dressed, the way they are, and I've seen
Well,
people that have been interested in it. You know, and
yeah,
it has
there's,
always been something that fascinates me.
well,
Not that I'd want to be a vampire myself
it is
because
fascinating. Yeah,
the
it
whole
completely
blood
is.
thing freaks me the hell out. So if I
Yeah.
see blood, I think I'd faint on the floor. So I would be no good as a vampire.
But there's all what, like I said, there's also psi vampires. They're the most psi vampires or pranic vampires. Those are the most common, above and beyond anybody else. If you ever, there's a show you can go to. It's on Hulu or Fox. I can't remember the exact name of it. It's called What We Do in the Shadows. There's a pranic vampire on that, and what he feeds off of is boredom. He can start somebody, rant a bit, and he feeds off their boredom in dramatic ways. And he can go like into an office, like I was saying, and bore them half to death to the point that they're exhausted.
Okay.
So if you want to see that show, that'll give you an idea of pranic vampires. It's funny, but it does have some amount of, I guess you could say, meaning in a different way. Tantric, I mean, tantric vampires, well, what can I say? They feed off sex, the energy that is produced in sex. But the ones that are blood, they're normally, not always, but they age extremely well as long as they have a feeding that is substantial. And like I said, they keep themselves physically clean and keep their health up in a general sense. But like I said, they age slow. What else is there? What else? Trying to get this right. Also, with Sangrean vampires added on to it, you got the teeth, you got the OCD, you've got the OCD, you've got certain. Well, there's a bunch of different things, but whenever it comes to their form of OCD, it has to be tested for and everything. It has to be tested. Their OCD has to be triggered. I mean, say like if you like, there are some people who say the word wash, WASH, and everything. But the thing is that they can also be triggered by certain words. So like I was saying, wash, there are certain parts of the country where they say wash. And if you say wash to somebody who you say wash to somebody, it just uh, drives vampires crazy if you don't say it the correct way. If you don't say it the correct way, it drives them nuts. And dropping some change, they'll pick that up. If say like they can be clean freaks. If they go into a place and like I said, they go into a place that is very dusty, even if it's not their place, they will start dusting and cleaning the living hell out of that place and making it look good to the best of their abilities.
So all this category stuff about garlic and steaks, are they just a thing of the films then? It's not really how it's used.
It's not that. Well, the thing is that whenever it comes to
we've been led on
garlic,
that vampires don't like garlic. They can't stand garlic. They don't like the smell of it. It scares them.
Most of them actually love the taste of garlic. They can feed off regular food and everything. I'm getting to a point.
Like it is on TV then.
There's something called wolfsbane. Wolfsbane is actually something that stinks. The smell is horrendous to them. It can make them gag and everything, and to some degree, it could be if it gets. It's something that is just over the top disgusting in their eyes. And characteristics that it has, it messes with their minds because every bit of it drives them insane. Now, you take that, and wolfsbane will do that. Garlic, to be honest, they're quite fond of it. Most of them love garlic, and they'll eat the hell out of it. That's a stereotype.
So a lot of what these things that are put into films are not how vampires really are. Then are they? Really?
No.
Like it?
No.
They've made the vampire character fictional by the way that they portray it out on TV.
Yeah.
When if they made films more on the real side of vampires, then
it will be quite boring.
Find it more believable. You know what I mean?
Actually,
when you say the word vampire to people, they automatically think it's this person that flies in a cape and can do that. Mm-hmm. There's no way that can exist, and anything's possible, obviously. You know what I mean? But if people would learn the real categories and the real ways of real vampires, then maybe they wouldn't be so judgmental on if it's real.
Well, yeah, I don't blame people for not believing in vampires because what Hollywood says that they do is ridiculous. They're not going to turn into a wolf. They're not going to turn into a bat or a wolf and everything. The reason why Hollywood does that sort of thing is because it's more exciting. It's more dramatic. People are going to watch it and this and that. They're going to watch it and this and that. And they're going to take note of it. Vampires, like I said, they're not immortal, but if they take care of themselves, they age a lot slower. On the issue of a crucifix, 9 cents of them adore crucifixes. If you ever go to you take a look in a cult type page that consists of vampires, many of them will wear a cross, no big deal. It doesn't even bother them.
So are vampires human?
Yes and no. Yes and no.
Explain to us how they're not human. If they can live and die like we do, how are they not human?
Well, it's the life that they have, number one, in the way that they live longer. They live longer than a lot of other people do. They're not immortal, but the thing is, they can be immune from certain things. So, like everyone's heard of this, the Black Plague. The Black Plague killed a ton of people, tons of people. But the thing was, is that but vampires were going around and being okay and everything because it was in the air. It wasn't in their bloodstream.
That's a
The
good
disease,
question.
yeah, it wasn't in their bloodstream. It was airborne. So it was like no big deal to them. So they would feed on this person or that person. But the moment that they drew blood from the person to sustain themselves, and if they were sick, then that's whenever the vampire would get sick. On the issue of sunlight, it will not kill them, but it weakens them. They get a certain amount of pain and
Headache.
headaches, uncomfortableness.
We
They
have
can
a
be,
question.
yes.
How are vampires different, say, to put a person who has a mental illness or an OCD or a sexual kink? Are they accused of these things?
They can be. A lot of people, I get where the question's coming from completely.
That's from
But
Jacqueline.
yes, that makes perfect sense. The thing is with vampires is that they do this to sustain themselves. People with mental illness, people with some sort of mental illness, um, they have no control over that sort of thing. People with OCD, that's a mental illness and everything, and she has a good point. It can come across as mental illness dramatically, but it really isn't. But I do get where she thinks that completely, but it's not the same thing. But on the other hand, it could be looked at as a form of cannibalism. It could be looked at as a form of cannibalism on that issue. So say like, so in other words, they do all this. In other words, they drink.
And cannibalism where people are eaten.
Yeah. People are eating,
Yeah,
feasted on, energy well.
I'm just trying to understand how, like, at the minute, I'm trying to like recall to Jacqueline's thing. She's talking about how can you tell the difference between a person with mental health and OCD problems to a vampire having it. Obviously, a vampire's not going to have mental health issues, but if you watched a vampire clean and frantically and stuff, and you watched a mental health person, you'd think it's the same thing.
You could, and I get that, but oftentimes vampires can look a lot healthier than somebody who has a mental health issue. Like I said, if there, if a person that is normally a person who does have a mental health issue and is a vampire, they'll look okay, but they'll do all that stuff. Now humans with mental sort of stuff with them, they're not going to aid. They're people that are human. I gotta put this. I'm trying to get this right. People that are human normally don't take. Normally age regularly. A vampire could be doing the same stuff, and for 2 or 3 years, I mean, they still look the same when right before they start the job, and that's one thing. People that are obsessed with their
Right.
teeth,
So the mental
they
health
will
could easily be told
confuse.
apart. But how can you tell apart OCD? How can you say what's different between a vampire having OCD and somebody that is human that's got OCD, that's classed as an illness? How's it different?
Well, I'm trying to get to the point, and she's got me on that one. She definitely has me on that one. But the way I see it is that if somebody becomes a vampire, they can develop OCD very quickly. Okay, if they become
But
that.
why? Why do
But a
they
human,
develop it?
but
What is the reason for them developing OCD? Is it because of that? I
the
don't
vampire
understand why they
embrace,
would get it.
the vampire embrace, because it could be suddenly brought on whenever that happens. They can, but whenever they're a regular human being, they may have that. If a person has OCD, a regular Joe human can have OCD. I'm trying to get this right. The person that has OCD and has already had it, they could be doing that for years or many different years of their life through thick and thin. And with them doing that sort of thing through thick and thin, they could have had it all their life. Now somebody who becomes a vampire, they can develop it in a very short amount of time. In a very short amount of time, we could, like, whenever they first get embraced, They can go and they can see it, and then they suddenly have to. But
But what
before they
makes
become a
them?
vampire, there was nothing.
But what
That I
makes them
don't
be
know.
on what in their like in their new life? Like obviously they've took on this role as a vampire, they've took blood and stuff. What? I'm just trying to
Mhm.
understand what would make them go suddenly to OCD, especially.
It just develops like that. With many of them, it does. They can just start. They may, whenever they're a regular human being, they may never have that sort of symptom as a mental health person or a mental health
Jacqueline said,
patient.
"Is it because
But then, whenever they
they
become a
need to
vampire,
make?" Jacqueline said, "Is it because they need to make sure the blood is pure so they become more extreme in their OCD? Could this be why?" But I guess it is about cleanness. You
maybe
would need to be cleaner, especially if you're working with blood and things like that. Yeah, you would have to,
you're,
but it wouldn't explain why you're going to
yeah,
radically clean your house up and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like
it just
that's the
happens
thing.
that way. If they become a vampire and everything, and they've had no background of mental health issues, they can start become they can start having that mental health issue of OCD and develop it very quickly.
Okay, and right, and the other part of her question was what is the difference between a vampire having a sex kink and somebody that's got a sex problem that's classed as being mentally unwell due to sex? How are they different? How is
Well,
a vampire not the same in the same category as somebody that is registered as having a problem with needing too much sex or whatever?
it can happen very quickly. A person who has a kink and everything that's a regular human could have that for a lifelong time of things and can have it from their teenagehood all the way into their adulthood. But with a vampire, it can start that a tantric vampire will need it suddenly. They will need to have sex very dramatically, very quickly. They need it quick and they need it done now. In other words, the person who is
But
a vampire
it's
who
just
just
really
became a
weird.
vampire,
I find it weird because, like, if you've gone all your life as a normal
mhm,
human being and you suddenly decide to become a vampire and you've not really been into sex when you was human, why would you become suddenly interested in sex when you become a vampire?
that to be honest, I don't know, but it does happen. That you could be, I think they
Is
call
there
it
certain things
asexual.
that they're given? Do they have to take certain things that maybe heighten their that the way that they think
Well,
or the way that they are?
there are, it can, it can. All I can say is that it can be whenever they do. Trying to get this right. Whenever they do become a vampire of some kind, they will need it and they will need it pretty badly in a very short amount of time. In other words, if they don't have it, they're going if they not going to have it and everything, it's going to drive them crazy. How can I put this? Oftentimes with sex, depending on the vampire, whether it's a male or a female, if they do have sex with somebody, oftentimes they feel better, they feel relieved, they feel like they had a lot of fun and this and that, and they feel better and they can go a few days without it and then start back up again. In other words, they're doing
Yeah,
an
but
act that
so
makes them
can
feel
humans.
better. And
So can humans. I'm just what we're trying to do is trying to
yeah,
understand what the difference is between a human
oh
being and
yeah,
a vampire. Like, because I'd say like you've got somebody that was never a vampire and they decided they wanted to become a vampire, but they were never interested in sex when they were
we're
human.
human.
Why would they
Yeah,
suddenly become interested in sex when they're a vampire? And what I'm trying to
I
understand is there stuff given to them to make
it
them
could be
act that
part.
way? Is there stuff
It's
given them to heighten
it's
them
not
in?
necessarily it's not necessarily a chemical. It's not a pill or this or that. It's they become their arousal rate becomes much higher and more dramatic. In other words, whenever they need it, they really need it
Yeah,
and they need
but
it
where does
now.
that come from though?
I have no
You
clue.
can't get it.
That's all I
You
can tell
can't
you.
be. like for me, it's really confusing because like if you're not into it when you're a human being,
Mhm.
and then suddenly you become a vampire, and you're suddenly into it really
And then
badly, you need it all the time, and all this stuff. There's got to be a motive behind wanting to be that way. Suddenly, you know what I
I
mean? So,
don't,
is
to
there a
be
drug
honest.
that's
Yeah,
involved? Is there a drug?
the
Is it
no, it's not a.
is it a
It's
sexual
part.
attraction to their new category of what they are? Is it because of what they are makes them feel sexy? Like, I'm trying to understand.
Oh, yeah. I don't necessarily know what causes it. All I know is what it
Have you
does.
ever thought of maybe looking into that and doing that as a show? Maybe looking
I've
into
tried.
how they become in these categories, how they become into OCD, how they became interested in sex, what it is that makes them become that.
I
Because
think
that
that
is
would
really
be.
interesting to find out.
I think that would be a great show. I'm not somebody who's a man of science. I'm not somebody who
Yeah.
knows genetics too well. But everything that
Oh
we
no, I'm not
do, feel
expecting
like,
you to. I was just asking you because
yeah,
I
no,
didn't
I
know if
think
you
it's a great
knew.
idea. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah,
It's just some people know it, some people don't. Me,
yeah.
all I know is what happens. I don't know why. All I
What do
know is
you
what.
guys think? There you go. Instead of putting it all on Samuel, because he's probably sitting there feeling like his eyes are popping out his head at the minute, wondering what the hell was she doing to me? Like, but, and do
Yeah.
any of you guys have a suggestion on why you think a human being that turns into a vampire would suddenly get a heighten in the way that they act? If that's in OCD, sexual, or anything, how do you think it becomes that way? If any of you, because obviously some of you are sitting in here saying that you know about vampires and stuff, so maybe you know about this. How did they become suddenly interested in sex and need sex all the time? How did they become so obsessed with blood that they need the blood? You know, how did they become that obsessed that they have to keep their teeth clean? They have to clean constantly. If they were somebody that weren't like that once, you know what I mean? Like, where does it come from? Because I'm not
The
being
one,
funny. They're not just gonna turn vampire and bang, slap it, just smacks you in the head and goes, right now you're into sex. You know what I mean? It's got to come from somewhere. You know what I
well,
mean?
well, take a look at the concept of French kissing, where it's two people's mouths in exchanging to some degree a certain saliva to some degree. That is genetics that is passed from one person to the next and to the next and everything. And it can happen that way. That's just a theory. I'm just trying to use that as an
What? Oh my
example.
god. Now we've got it going, Samuel. Now somebody's going, would there be any book works of a gay vampire?
There are gay vampires, a lot of them, a lot of gay, and it could be
There you
both
go.
lesbian, and it could also be homosexual men, and there's nothing wrong with that. But like I said, there are vampire, but for to some degree, I'm going to say this: all vampires, whenever it comes to those acts, they're all bisexual to some degree. They may have a preference of, say, like a man for a woman, but they will settle for a man with the man, and the same could be with women. Often, like I was saying earlier, they can all be they're all sexually promiscuous to some degree. But so, like, some people have a harem, some people want to be part of a harem. But like I said, all vampires are bisexual to some degree because that is a very intimate act, not necessarily the sex, but the blending of two people from blood to blood, from of energy and this and that, and they all are. And like I said,
So do they
that's
stick
the
to
stuff I've
one?
noticed.
Do they stick to one person, or can they go with many?
They can be with many. They can, but after a while, they can have one. They will want one person as a constant companion. Oftentimes, added on to it, if a vampire is going for the hunt, say like with Sangrean vampires going for the hunt, they will oftentimes use sex as a tool to get what they want. And they will use sexual energy, they will use sexual type looks or this or that to get what they want and to have what they want.
But
Um,
that's not much. That's
so
not much. But that's not much different to us, really, is it? I'm not being funny. We
it
give the
isn't.
look and give the body language
but
and dress
it's
up nice
we.
and
But the thing is, many ways, I guess you could say they do it to survive. We do it to do it and everything. They do that sort of thing to survive, to keep themselves going. And there's a big difference in that sort of way. Whenever you're wanting sex, you want sex. But whenever a person or it's like when a person wants blood, they that could be a form. They will go from one person to the next to the next, trying to get what they want. That's a very intimate act. And not always, but a lot of people that, well, all vampires are bisexual, but they use sexuality to feed off the person in a sanguine way, a tantric way. Well, that's pretty obvious, but they do it because they need it. Otherwise, if they don't do it, they get sick, and they get dramatically sick, even to the point that COVID is nothing compared that they're not getting fulfilled.
so
Does that make
if
any
you're a
sense?
vampire if you're a vampire that's having that, like that is connected to sex or blood or whatever, if they're not getting it, that can make them ill and even kill them, then, is what you're saying.
Well, it can also go beyond that. There's something called a frenzy. A frenzy is something that if they're not having certain needs done, or not having certain things that are not happening to them, um, they can go on a frenzy in the way that they will do anything and everything it takes to sustain themselves in some sort of way. And take like a pranic vampire. A pranic vampire, if they're not drawing energy from somebody, they will draw energy from anyone and everything in a certain amount of a radius to get what they want, to get what they need. Otherwise, they're going to get sick, pain, and this and that. And it's going to drive them nuts to the point that they can't take it anymore, and they will do whatever they can to get that need fulfilled.
Another question.
Yes.
Are vampires buried a certain way that they don't come back? Are they buried differently to what we're buried?
Well, there are three parts to the killing of an actual vampire. Now, keep in mind, like I said, these are three parts, and it has to be done in a certain order. First, the heart has to be impaled. It doesn't have to be wood, but the heart is impaled, and it will kill the body, but that spirit is still there. Then after that, you have to behead the body. Once the head is done, once the head is chopped off, then the spirit of the vampire and also the human part of it is gone out of that area, but it can still come back in the way of reincarnation. But then there's the third part, and this one's pretty critical, is that you have to incinerate the whole body. In other words, cremate it. Once it's cremated, then that person can move on and everything without the curse of that vampire.
So anybody that's in the living, that's a vampire today, would normally be cremated then?
Anybody can have that happen to them. That's one thing I'm saying. But whenever it comes to that sort of thing, I'm trying to get this right. Whenever it does happen that way, anyone can have that happen to them. But vampires prefer those that are willing to do that. They want a person that gives themselves. They don't want to take it. They want to give it.
Yeah. Okay, no, I get that. Thinking of others is saying, are vampires a type O? So they may have any type of blood. Hello, Tim.
I don't know. To be honest, I'll be honest with you, I don't know. All I know, there's a theory that they want people that have, one of the reasons that feed is because they need vitamin D. Vitamin D If you're out in the sun and you don't produce a lot of vitamin D, you're going to feel sick. You're going to feel nauseous. You're going to burn real easy. And that vitamin, and this is a theory, there's no way I can prove it, but the vitamin D is something that they absolutely need. And certain things that vampires are able to do and not do, they can't get and make their own.
Have you seen those old graves that are supposedly where vampires are buried? Because the ground is covered in a metal frame, so they won't rise up through the throughout on the thing. Yeah, and this is a similar thing that happens with witches as well. It's like witches are meant to be buried with like a rock or a stone over them, so that their soul can't lift and come out, and that they're buried with shoes and that on, so that their soul's not able to that the witch's soul's not able to be removed. So I can kind of understand what Coffin's saying there as well, that vampire graves have a metal framing over it so that they can't rise. Have you seen anything like that?
I've heard about that many times, but I've never really seen it here where I'm at. And that's the honest truth. I have not seen it here. But like I said, in many different parts of the world, that the 3 parts of killing a vampire, that's how it's supposed to happen. Does it happen? Is it supposed but like I said, that's what they do. But as far as burying the entire body underground and everything like that with the metal case over it, to be honest, I never have seen it. I literally have never seen it.
Yeah, well, Coffin's saying, he's just saying, have you ever seen the graves that are supposedly where vampires are buried? Because the ground is covered in metal frames, so they won't rise up throughout that's what the theory is.
It's a theory. It is a theory. He's got a point. But like I said, I don't know. I have never seen it myself. I've heard about it many times, but I've never seen it.
But I haven't seen it personally either, no. But I'm not saying that there has been weird graves that I've seen online that are meant to be supposedly linked to vampires, just the same as these graves that are meant to be linked to certain witches and stuff. There aren't normally certain ways that these sort of beings are buried. Obviously, from what Sam's saying, a lot of them would be cremated. They would have to be, to make sure that the whole body's destroyed and the soul goes off somewhere else. But obviously, not every vampire would have been cremated. Some of them are obviously buried, so there must have been other ways that they would have been kept under control. Because the thing is, they're supposed to be able to rise back up, aren't they? They're supposed to be able to come back to life and live through eternity. Live for eternity. Okay, that is what a lot of the stalk theories of story is that there's something that is living but not living. That like they look like they're alive, but they're not. You know what I mean?
But that's well, like I said, the body can die. Any part of the body can die, and there's no getting around it. Death comes for us all at some point. But the thing is that these are theories. These are all theories that people have. And some of them may be true, but they're not super powerful. They're not immortal and everything. They have their gift. Yeah, and he's got it. And you're right. There's no way of fully knowing. I know a lot on this subject, but do I know everything? God, no, I don't. Okay. Whenever it comes to paranormal, the occult, I think I know something, then I find out there are 60 things I don't know that goes along with the subject. In other words, I make 2 steps and I need to make 75.
Okay.
So
say like a human being met a vampire, okay, and had sex, and the one that's not a vampire becomes pregnant. What would their child be classed as? Would they be classed as a vampire? Would they be classed as human? Would they be classed as a half-breed?
This is called a Dhampir.
And would the child be more powerful? Would the child be more powerful having both energies?
Then the child would be strong and everything. and they have certain things that the vampire can do. Now, and also the Dhampir can go out in sunlight and this and that and everything. But the thing is that oftentimes they feel more guilty about their ancestors that have done these horrible things. There's more susceptible to it. They're more susceptible to a lot of things that have dramatic wrongs that have been done, and the guilt that goes along with it. And with all the guilt that goes along with it, they feel it, and they feel it hardcore. They feel it bad, and they feel it bad hard. And so with all that, Dhampirs are taken advantage of because they don't know their background. They don't know what has happened in their life in that sort of way. So they're only getting one side of the spectrum. Now, oftentimes when somebody goes on, and oftentimes with Dhampirs, they are, how can I put this? They're often used, like they're brought into the world of hunting. Now, over in Los Angeles, and I'm sure everybody's heard of that, Los Angeles, in theory, has the most vampires in the world and everything. Some of those people are obvious. Some people are not so obvious. Now, hunters, on the other hand, are those people who can be considered zealous in the way that they harm a person or this or that. They harm the person, and they do dramatic freaking horrors and everything to a vampire who's never done anything to hurt anybody. All they can do is just have the vampire might have a donor, and people judge them, sentence them, and execute them because they think it's of their faith and it's of their right. And many of them call it doing the Lord's work in various different ways. And there are many societies who believe in doing that to vampires in that sort of way. And those hunters can bring a Dhampir, which gives them a certain amount of an edge to go along with that.
So, are there actual vampire hunters today then?
Yes. And not just vampire hunters, but they're called hunters. Hunters are people, as they say, hunters are people, whenever something goes bump in the night, a hunter bumps back.
Yeah, I get that, but I'm just saying specifically like vampire hunters, people that go out and
there are people that specific.
They always put a vampire hunter in it, don't they? I'm just wondering if there is any of them today, because obviously vampires are supposed to exist.
There are people that specialize in that sort of way. There are people that are vampire hunt. There are people that specialize in hunting vampires. But as far as only one type, no, there are multiple types. They have their specialty, but they can hunt people very quickly and very dramatically. And also people that can do sorcery, or even people. Now, some comic books, I don't know if this I'm clueless about, I'll be honest with you. A lot of people use certain kinds of machines or cyborgs or this or that to do all that with. And so I don't think that's true, but I could be completely wrong about that. But they will use different sorts of people. Now, like I said, Dhampirs can be trained into hunting like anybody else can. And so bringing in a Dhampir to hunt a vampire, well, a hunter and his hunting group has the advantage in that sort of way.
Right. Yeah, no. Okay. Hang on. So, like the living human being, like the ones that are human but become vampire and stuff like that, like all the vampires themselves. Like what you see in a film, do they have the abilities to be able to control people's minds?
It depends on the person. It depends on the vampire.
So
Some of
that
them
can they
sometimes
control their minds to the extent that that person will go to them through them thinking?
that's a possibility. And let's be honest here, there are some people that were born with gifts, and then there are some people born without gifts. But
I
whenever
think
it
it's
comes to
funny that I get told I have an ability for pulling people in. Okay, I have an ability for talking and pulling people in. Okay, like
Mhm,
have that sort of tendency that people become
mhm.
very attracted to me, not sexually, so don't even go there, right?
I'm watching my
But
language.
they become they become attracted to me in the way because of what I give off and stuff
And
like
what
that.
you
Yeah.
produce.
Now,
And
I would
vampires.
probably be a very like if I was a vampire, I'd probably be very good at getting someone to do what I wanted them to do because of the way that I
Well,
am. You know what I mean?
well, this is going to back you up a little bit. Whenever somebody who can do that and everything can do that, and then suddenly, like I call it the embrace, they're really able to do it and do it easily. Like I said, most vampires, not always, but they can be quite beautiful, charming, sophisticated, and this and that. They can be all of that and draw somebody in, like you just said. Whenever you draw somebody in, now imagine if you imagine that you being being able to do that and then becoming a vampire. How do you think? Could they resist you? Maybe not. Maybe
But
not.
no, but
Maybe
like, people can't now. Like everybody says that. I'm not big headed because I'm not
no. I
somebody
know.
that loves myself and that. Yeah, but I get a lot of compliments and I get a lot of people come up to me and everybody I ask, why are you so like? It's your look. It's how you
Mhm.
look. It's the way that you come across. You just pull us in. The way you talk. The way you do this. The way you do that. It's very, very vampire
Sophisticated.
characteristic. Yeah, I'm not saying I'm a vampire, guys. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is if you've got that tendency in you already and you're good at that already, you're good at enticing people in, you're good at getting people to see what you want and they're
Answer.
wanting to give
Yeah.
that to you, yeah, then you would probably make a pretty good vampire. Like,
It's not just
you
that,
know,
but yes, you are right. There's oftentimes so like with what you just said. Say like if your number is like 45 to draw somebody in, and then you receive the embrace and become a vampire, your new level would be about 65 or 70. In other words, what you can do is just heightened in that sort of way. Vampires are people that their power level, they're not immortal. Remember, I said that, but they can draw people in. And with someone like you, the way you look, you draw people in already. But imagine you doing it 10 or 20 levels stronger than what you can now.
I
Now
can do
imagine you
I
being
can
able to
like
do
I
that
can do it
10
while
or
I'm
20
sitting
times
there.
stronger.
I can sit there, give out certain things to people and things like
Mhm.
that, and I could sit there, yeah, and I draw people in just by them wondering what I'm thinking because I'm a very hard person to read. Okay, so that already fascinates a lot of people because they can't read what I'm like. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
in a way, like I think I've got when it comes to the whole mind and being in the place I want to be in and getting the things that I want, I think I'm quite good at doing that. Okay, because it's just something that's natural. I don't
Mhm.
know why, but
Yeah.
you know,
But
and
you
I do believe that all vampires, just like us witches, humans, whatever, you know, we've all got different abilities. We're all good at different things. You know what I mean? Like there might be some that are good at reading minds. There might be some that are really good at
mhm.
sending over energy. Some that are really good at sex. You know, they've all got different abilities that they're good at. That's why they are what they are in their faith. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Not all
But
vampires
if
drink blood. Not all
one of the
vampires.
things that
Well, they do have
well one
sex, but
Well, one of the things is that vampire, like you just said, they can draw people into this and that. But the thing is that not always, but vampires can want somebody as a companion who already has abilities. Now, if the person's a human and already has abilities, then that's where not always, but a lot of vampires will want something like that. and make them even more than what they are. And like I said, with you, what you just said, and like I said, and not just drawing people in. Say, like if somebody has something called pyrokinesis, the power to control fire. If somebody is
it's just that somebody asked that. Somebody asked me that as a question. That's why I said about it.
yeah, and that's I'm trying to give an example. I'm trying to use that as an example. Like with you, if you were like you were a level 60, all of a sudden you become a vampire, you're looking at level 80 or level 90. You could do it so well that you don't need to, and you can have a crowd of guys and girls following you anyway because you're so good at it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
that does,
but like I said,
Tinkin says, do vampires leave footprints when they walk by?
Yes, they do. Yes,
they do. Yes.
Yes.
They do. Maybe not in the films thinking, because the films are made to be made believe, you know what I mean? They make the vampires in a stereotype that they're not, you know what I mean? Vampires are, I'm not going to say they're human because they're classed as both, aren't they? They're human and not human. They're in between, but that, you know, they die like us. They just age slower, live longer, you know, so they still have the body as what we do. They're not ice cold. They haven't got cold skin or anything like that either. You know, they are like us. It's just they're different.
And a lot of vampires, not always, but a lot of them prefer colder environments.
Oh yeah, no, they do, but they're not cold-blooded. Yeah. They're not.
No, I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
But they prefer colder environments. And so, like, if you were to go to the northern part of Scotland, a lot of them would love that. A lot of them prefer city-type areas. So that way, especially pranic vampires, if they can go to a city-type environment, then they love that and they adore that.
So why do they like cold places, though? They're not dead. They're still living. So why do they like it?
They prefer. I can't remember exactly. City-wise, it's easier to feed. That one I do know.
Yeah.
But whenever they're in colder environments, like I'll give you an example. Have you ever gone to Florida? Just one out, Central Florida. Well, people that are in Florida or Central Florida, it is hot, number one, and number two, it's humid as anything. And whenever you sweat here, you're not always going to cool down from a nice cool breeze. You're going to get hot and you're going to stay hot. And they prefer areas where they are comfortable and to some degree, this is in theory. This is like huge theory. But the less of a percent of the body heat can be a lot higher. In movies and TV shows, they say that they're colder blood. Oftentimes, they actually have a hotter blood. So if inside their body, if their body is hotter, and the outside and their environment is that of a hotter nature, they want to be in a cooler environment. So like I said, they would adore the northern part of Scotland or Finland or Norway. They would prefer being in not frozen environments, but cooler environments because it just makes them a little bit more comfortable. But coming to Florida, like I said, coming to Florida, not always, but most of them environmental wise can be quite miserable.
Well, they're not meant to like heat very much, are they? They don't like the sun very much in the heat. So that would probably explain why they would prefer to be in a cooler place.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But
it's
like we're all living. Like me, I'm hot-blooded. Obviously, I have hot blood because I'm alive. But most of the time, I feel the coldness, and I'll feel like I'm cold. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And with you would love to be out in the sun. You would love to be out in the sun. You would love to be out in the warm waters of the Caribbean. But what I'm saying is that you would love to be out in the sun. And
I prefer the sun to the cold, but I'm not fussed on the cold either. I'm happy.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm just saying that there's that possibility.
Yeah,
But like I said, with all that, most people that are vampires, they prefer being in the cold. That's how it is.
yeah. Right, okay, so
So
there's your answer. They like being in the cold,
just not the extreme cold.
not the extreme cold. Not icicle cold, where they've got icicles
Yeah,
coming off of them.
like if you yeah, like if they sneeze and all of a sudden they have stalactites coming out of their nose. They don't want that.
Pat the crew is here. Hello, Pat.
Oh, cool. So is there any other questions by chance?
Is there any more, guys? Because we are coming up to the 2 hour mark.
Well, if that's it, I will say
The
adieu on
crew.
this.
Hello is
Oh,
Sherry.
okay.
Huh?
Okay. Well, I guess I'm going to take a cue on this. I guess that's the end of the questions. Did you want to say anything, Sherry?
I would just like to say to everybody, thank you very much for coming on and joining us this evening, and for listening to this amazing show with Samuel. And thank you for all the questions and the interest. We really do enjoy doing these shows, and these will continue. There will be some new ones coming up soon. Give us a few weeks to get things into play, but there will be some really cool shows coming back with some new guests and some old guests as well, but not old, they're awesome. So from a big thank you to you all, guys. Stay safe and stay real. Remember that you're loved, guys. And a big thank you from me. I'll just let Samuel say his goodbyes to you, and then I'll do the 30-second count out, and then I will stop the stream. But thank you again, angels. Love you
Well, I want to
lots.
say to everyone. Well, I want to say thank you to everybody that's been watching us and everything. And if anybody choose to watch it later, I'm very grateful. I wanted to say thank you to everybody that listened to me, and you guys did. And I really appreciate your time and I appreciate your effort. And I hope to hear from you soon. All right.
And
Well, I
thank you
guess
very
that'll be
much,
the end of me.
Samuel, for doing the show. We really enjoyed it. And sorry about all the questions, but it got a good conversation going, and it was really good. So again, another awesome show as always.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. You folks take care and good night.
Lots of love and light. See you later. Right, yes. So, angels, thank you for coming in. Thank you for being here. We hope that you have enjoyed the evening. We're off to go now, and lots of love and light. And I will see you again. I'm going to be on again tomorrow night and tonight. That means like not now, but like in 24 hours so or whatever. It'll be in the afternoon that your time, so it'll be about 7, half 7 my time. I'm going to be doing some card readings. I want to do it as early as I can because I want to be able to chill and things. It's been a hectic week and I just want to chill out. So card readings tomorrow evening my time, so it'll be after 7, guys. So please come and join me on that. Thank you again, guys, for coming to Samuel's show tonight and to the company show, and lots of love and light from us, and we'll see you very soon. And remember to stay spooky. Love and light, guys.